G'day. We're in a different situation today. We're down at the amphitheatre in Noosa, at the Noosa Botanic Gardens near Karoi.
It's a beautiful spot, isn't it?
Isn't it wonderful?
Great.
But I'm here today to introduce you my friend and mentor, and he's also the editor of this series of videos on walks through the Bible, talks through the Bible. And I've invited him to talk about one of the books of the Bible today. So here's Geoff Hovey, Pastor Geoff Hovey from Tenterfield in New South Wales, has come up just to talk to us. Thank you, Geoff. Bless you, mate.
Thank you, Paul.
And all the best. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, and wonderful to be able to share with you. When Paul invited me to share one of my favourite passages, I immediately said I would like to share from the Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon. It's one that isn't used very often for preaching for a number of reasons. It's not the easiest book to understand for a number of reasons. Firstly, there's no storyline in it. It's just people dialoguing backwards and forwards. There's no narrative, but there is a storyline tucked away inside there. There's another reason why people avoid it, and that's because it is so frankly intimate. It's the story of a couple deeply, passionately in love, and we are involved in their conversations. But the story depicts the love that Jesus Christ has for his church, the bride. When we go to the New Testament, we have Jesus talking about the fact that the bride is his church. His church is his bride. And the beautiful analogy there just makes such wonderful meaning out of the Song of Songs. And so I love this passage, and as I'm reading it, I'm hearing the heart of God for his church. We all know the concept that God is love, but how much do we measure that love? And the easy way is to bring it into human terms that we can understand, and we hear from a man deeply and passionately in love with his bride. And we get to hear, listening in at the keyhole, as he is addressing her in terms of endearment, and we listen in as she responds back to him. So I've just picked out one short passage to denote, really typify this for us. And this is him talking to her. And he says, "You are as beautiful as Tirzah, my darling, as lovely as Jerusalem." I'm not sure I'd talk like this to my Margy. I'm not sure that she would understand, but there you go. And he goes on, "As majestic as troops with banners. Turn your eyes from me, my darling, because they overwhelm me. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep coming up from the washing. Each has its twin. Not one of them is missing. Your temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate." Then he comes in with a short comment that I've got to admit, it gets me every time I read it. Catches in my throat. 60 queens there may be, and 80 concubines, and virgins beyond number. But my dove, my perfect one, is unique, the only daughter of her mother, the favourite of the one who bore her. The young women saw her and called her blessed. The queens and the concubines praised her. Probably needs a little bit of teasing out so that we can really catch what is being said. It was a different time, different age, different culture. It was life in a palace. I don't live in a palace, and probably most of you don't either. So we don't understand easily what he was actually saying. But in his palace, he had an unlimited number of servants. There were virgins, young maidens running here, running there, doing all sorts of things, serving him. He didn't know them all that well. He might recognise their faces, but that was about all. Their role was serving. But inside the palace there was also another group of ladies, and again needs a little bit of explanation because we don't have an equivalent within our culture. We've heard of the word concubine, and usually we translate that as being a mistress. But no, the concubine was brought into the palace, spent her life in the palace. She only ever knew one man the whole of her life, but that man was the king, and her role was to produce children for the king. And she measured her value on the number of children that she would have. If she had twins, she was more highly valued. If she had 3 sons, she was more highly valued. If she had 12 sons, she'd be much, much more highly valued. Her value was in her family. So there was 80 concubines, and they didn't have much relationship with the king at all, only for the sake of having children. But there was 60 queens. And the king would marry a number of women specifically to try and reinforce alliances with other nations, other kings. If he married the daughter of a neighbouring kingdom, then they're not likely to come and attack. And so he would take on board these queens, and they would be there for the prestige, the honour, the power within the palace. But one day it seems that the king has gone out into the fields and seen a farm girl, and has become absolutely besotted with her. I love the fact that my Heavenly Father sent Jesus to come out of the palace of glory and come into the farm. And the king tries not to woo her just by going and bringing his kingly robes. Yes, sure, if he came like that, she would probably like the idea of becoming a queen or going in to bear children. But no, he decided she was so special. He wanted her to love him for who he was, not for his position. And so he goes out dressed in ordinary clothes, and she falls in love with him, and he falls in love with her. And so we have the story that is being told in this particular passage, and it goes right through courtship, and eventually the intimacy, the special intimacy that is being portrayed. Fortunately, it's usually using euphemisms, because if it was using plain language, it would probably be banned in schools. Either that or they'd make it compulsory reading in schools. But there is a special love that is being expressed through these pages. And so we have these words where he says, there are 80 concubines. There are servants without number. There are 60 queens. But my beloved, my loved one is unique. She is just one. She loves me, not because of the job she can get, not because of the power and prestige, but she loves me for who I am. And I love her because of her love. What a beautiful picture of Jesus loving me, and I would desperately like to express my love back to him in that way.